Good morning and welcome to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Hope smiles from the threshold of the year to come, whispering it will be happier. So wrote Alfred Lord Tennyson. Well, we've now crossed into the second full week of January and you are most welcome to 2 hours of arts, culture and current affairs here on the programme. Sir Keir Starmer wanted to start the year by being clearer about his government's vision and objectives. Has he succeeded? My panel will discuss. Iran has warned Washington it will retaliate against any attack by treating Israel and US military bases as legitimate targets. Reports suggest that President Trump is discussing how to carry out a military strike on the country. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is expected to unveil yet another U-turn by announcing a financial package to rescue pubs which face closure due to spiralling business rates. Publican and Telegraph food critic William Sitwell will join me. And the government is urging Ofcom to act within days over Elon Musk's X after its Grok AI was used to create sexualized deepfakes that digitally undressed people without their consent. Elon Musk has labeled the outcry as an excuse for censorship. Is it? All of that and much more. First, your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning to you. 11 here in the GB newsroom. Iran says any attack on its forces in support of anti-government demonstrations would lead to retaliation against Israel and US forces in the Middle East. It's understood Washington is considering military intervention after President Trump said the US is ready to help protesters find freedom. Iranians continue to take to the streets in defiance of a deadly government crackdown amid reports that hundreds of people have been killed by security forces. Imposed a communications blackout and have warned protesters will be considered an enemy of God, an offence that carries the death penalty. Protesters are calling for an end to the clerical rule of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, but former chair of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood, says it's unlikely to improve Iranian lives.
The question is what happens next, and there's talk about this, the son of the Shah returning. I think that's very, very unlikely. There is no national coordination between all those that are angry. And the caution is that the most powerful body that remains is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, which is enormous and owns much of society, much of the economy. And they are likely to come down and react very, very hard indeed. So we'd end up possibly seeing an autocratic theocracy replaced by a military dictatorship.
Meanwhile, the US says it's carried out a number of strikes against the Islamic State group in Syria. Saturday's offensive was part of Operation Hawkeye Strike, the US response to an IS attack which claimed the lives of 2 American soldiers and an interpreter in Palmyra last month. A footage shared by US Central Command shows a series of explosions. It is not clear where the strikes took place or if there were any casualties. Tens of thousands of people across the United States have joined another day of protests against the activities of immigration and customs enforcement. It follows the fatal shooting of Renee Nicole Good by an ICE agent in Minneapolis on Wednesday. The Trump administration says he was acting in self-defense. Local officials insist the woman posed no threat. Around 30 people have been arrested. Sir Keir Starmer is reportedly in talks with his European allies about deploying military personnel to Greenland. It follows threats from President Trump, who says the US needs the self-governing island for security reasons. Mr. Trump has threatened to seize it the easy way or the hard way. Well, it's understood plans would involve British soldiers, warships and planes being deployed as part of a NATO force to counter the threat from Russia and China. European nations hope it will persuade the US president to abandon his plans to annex the island. The Conservatives say they would ban under-16s from social media if they were in power. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch has also pledged smartphones would be banned in schools to protect children's mental health and education. They're intending to follow the example of Australia, which became the first country to introduce the policy last month. Well, the teaching union, the NASUWT, has also called for the move. The government doesn't currently support the ban, but says it's taking action to ensure children can only access age-appropriate content online. A new interactive map to track pothole repairs has been launched in England. A red, amber and green traffic light rating system will assess how well billions of pounds worth of investments being spent across more than 150 local highway authorities. 13 of those have already received a red rating. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander says drivers have for far too long been left to pay the price. Finally, more wintry weather is expected to batter the UK as warnings for snow, ice, wind and rain remain in place. Storm Gretty brought gusts of almost 100 miles per hour and a rare red warning in the southwest, leaving towns like Cadwith on the Lizard Peninsula without power. Elsewhere in Cornwall, a man in his 50s was killed when a tree fell on his caravan. Some positive news: the cold snap and the challenging conditions are set to ease by the beginning of next week with the arrival of milder weather. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with more later. Now it's over to Michael.
Thank you, Aaron Armstrong. It was the Prime Minister's firm intention to start the year expressing more empathy with the British public and being clearer about his aims and ideas. He wanted to focus on the cost of living, but the first week of 2026 was dominated by foreign affairs from Iran to Venezuela, not forgetting Ukraine and China. Can Labour ever cut through on issues that matter to British voters? Joining me now is my panel, former Conservative advisor Jennifer Powers and former Labour Party chair Baroness Hayter. Welcome to you both. Diane, what is the message from the government? What does the government want to say to the British people at the moment?
I know what it wants to say, and it sadly isn't getting it across, because what's happening domestically is actually the government's doing an enormous amount for families, whether it's, you know, the breakfast clubs, more free school meals, childcare, the fact that the interest rates have come down, so there's no threats to people's mortgages, improving stuff for tenants. There's this enormous story going on that really helps families. And yet somehow, because the government's doing it sort of issue by issue, so we get one announcement on breakfast clubs, one announcement on maybe free childcare and stuff like that, somehow they're not putting it together into a story.
Well, how would you put it together then?
I would put it by describing how it affects people rather than how it's going to be delivered. So we have too much, you know, we've just had a thing on the news about we're going to look at how we're going to measure whether potholes have been done, instead of actually saying it'll be easier for drivers when you don't affect the car. So all the time, for some reason or other, we're talking about how you deliver what I think are very good policies, rather than how they affect people.
But many people have been affected by higher prices, which have been brought on by higher national insurance contributions on employers. Many people are being sucked into another tax bracket because the thresholds have been frozen. So those people are not going to respond to a message from the government about the cost of living, are they?
Well, I think that there's two things there. I mean, there's a major problem that I think all the parties have got. I think we've got. We want more spending on police, on the health service, on education, on potholes, on all of those. And yet every time we want to raise the money to pay for what people want, whether we raise it by business tax or on a, you know, an energy levy or anything else, we say, oh no, we don't want that. And I think that all the parties have got to be much more honest. If we want to provide the sort of society that people demand, quite rightly demand, we have to be very honest that this money has to be raised somewhere.
Jennifer Powers, what do you think is the nature of the government's problem? Why is it finding it difficult to articulate its programme?
Well, good morning. I think it goes beyond communications on the story to the policies that the government is pursuing. We've seen a whole raft of policies which have really had a detrimental effect in terms of the economy, and a government not really addressing the significant challenges that we face as a country. And I think, you know, I can't imagine how difficult it must be for Keir Starmer as an international human rights lawyer to be faced with the challenges the country faces now and to get his head around what needs to happen, because before the government can actually improve prosperity, it needs to reform the state. And that means making radical changes with regard to human rights law, but also slaying some of the sacred cows of the left around welfare spending and entitlements. And I'm not sure that he's grasped the need to do that, and he's certainly not acted on it. And even if he did, I'm not sure Labour backbenchers and the broader Labour Party would permit him to enact that programme. So I think there are deep structural issues for the government.
We hear that he's expressing deep frustration about this, that he can't get things done. He's wading through some sort of miasma, some sort of bog.
Yes.
Who do you think might be able to help him with that? How would you set about reforming the state? I mean, I hate to say this, but the only person who ever talks about this properly is Dominic Cummings.
I was just going to say, absolutely right. He needs to just stay up all night and read Dominic Cummings, very long and plentiful blogs. But look, it comes down to a few things. I think we have to reverse the supposed neutrality of the civil service. We need to put civil servants under the direct control of ministers. I think we need to allow huge reform so that officials are held to account and that they are entrusted with much more responsibility. But if they fail to deliver, they're able to be moved, they're able to be exited from. And that will then give the ministers the levers of power. Now, whether they are up to the challenge of knowing what needs to be done and pulling these levers is another issue. But I think the fact that the Prime Minister sort of whined about how, he pulled a lever and nothing happened. It's like, this has been clear for many, many years. And I myself remember speaking to Labour shadow ministers before the election saying, it's absolutely broken. If you want to get anything done, you have to reform the state to achieve your objectives. I may not agree with them, but, I want Britain to be a success. So you have to do this. And just looked at me blank-eyed and did nothing about it. And I'm full of despair at the lack of grasp that this government has in terms of what needs to happen to reform the state to allow them to achieve anything, let alone arguments about whether I agree with it. So I'm a little bit pessimistic that he's going to really rise to the challenge.
Dan, Keir Starmer at one moment said that any time he spent not focusing on the cost of living was a moment wasted. But he rushed from the political cabinet, excluding civil servants, to Paris because there was yet another summit that he had to attend. And I just wonder where he stands mentally, because, my assessment is he does better on foreign affairs than on anything else. And I dare say it is for him a comfort zone. When you go abroad, you're treated very nicely. Everyone's very polite to you. As soon as you come home, everyone's absolutely beastly to you. So you understand why Prime Ministers prefer foreign affairs. But does he know that he can only have a chance in the election if he comes across clearly on domestic matters?
I think there's two things there. I think as Prime Minister, I hope he doesn't focus on the election too much. I think he has to do what's right for Britain. And the issue at the moment is the instability in the world. You have to sort that out. It will affect cost of living. In an area that you know well, we are going to have to spend more on defence. And unfortunately, that is likely to affect all of us because we're going to have to pay higher tax, in my view, because we've got to keep the country safe. Nothing else, in a sense, is more important than that. And that's why his work abroad, although it is for global security, actually affects our domestic well-being, even though we don't feel that at the moment. But the absence of war, if you like, and I'm not saying there's an invasion due, but that absence of war will be more important, in a sense, than a lot of the domestic policies. So
but that point about defence spending brings you immediately back to Jennifer's point. As a former Secretary of State for Defence, I will tell you that probably plenty of money is being spent on defence. It is being spent appallingly. Yeah. It is being spent wastefully.
Yes.
If I were the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, I don't think I'd want to give the Defence Ministry any more money because they spend it so badly. So unless you sort out the problems that Jennifer has been talking about, spending more money on defence will get you no more.
Sadly, I don't think we've got the time on defence to wait for Jennifer's solutions. Or, your views about procurement.
But how will you make the next pound better spent than the last?
Well, I think that, I do think we've learned quite a lot from Ukraine, and I think that the work that's going on into this anti-drone and also much more impressive drone in that does show that our procurement is improving. And as you know, we're setting up a special new procurement approach because you're absolutely right, it's been a major problem. We're always fighting, as they say, the last wars. And, all of the stuff we've been doing on tanks is clearly not been as productive as it might be. But we don't have a choice. you know, we do have to look at what Trump is up to now, and we do have to think about what Putin is threatening to Europe. So we don't have, I think, the luxury on that area of waiting.
I agree with you on that, but I mean, even on his supposed foreign affairs triumphs, like meeting with Macron and committing troops to Ukraine, or saying that we're going to deploy to Greenland as an alternative to stop Trump from doing something ridiculous in the high north. You know, we don't have the numbers in the British Army to actually deploy any number of troops for any significant period of time. So it just seems to be rhetoric over reality here.
Jennifer, may I ask you a point? I mean, British people are now rather used to saying, and I think it includes the Prime Minister, that nothing works here. We're all very frustrated about this lever point. Is there a contrast here where, you know, the President of the United States, President Trump, is able to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants? Now, lots of people in Britain, I think, don't agree with Trump. Republicans tend to be quite unpopular in Britain. But do you think people will see a big contrast between a government at home that can do literally nothing and a government abroad that can do anything it wants?
Yeah, and I reflect on that point quite a bit, actually, as a dual citizen and having experience and family in both countries. And it's not to say that the American state works really well either. There are huge problems. I think it's a problem across the West of the kind of ossification of the bureaucratic state. But Trump has not allowed that to stop him. Some of us may wish that it did stop him on some of maybe his more outlandish activity. But no, I've spoken with people on the far left here and said to them, you know what, isn't Trump so fascinating? Because it, you know, despite whatever part of the political spectrum you come from, it shows you can get stuff done if you want to.
But he's mostly doing international. He's mostly doing international stuff. He doesn't run the...
No, he's stopped
the President of the United States can kidnap Nicolas Maduro.
Yes.
But we can't stop a boat arriving on one of our beaches. That's the contrast.
But I mean, I think that there's one thing I just want to stop. I mean, I think that we sort of exaggerate that we say Britain doesn't work. Our hospitals and that, you know, most people going to see their doctors are having a very, very good service. Our kids are being educated. Our students are being educated at university. You know, on the whole, things work very well. So don't downplay too much the state.
Well, we're just going to have to agree to disagree on that then.
Very good. And you can disagree further later on, because Jennifer Powers and Diane Hayter will be back at noon to discuss whether international law means anything and whether, if it does, we should support it. Coming up. Violent unrest has spread across Iran. Are we witnessing the fall of the regime? You're watching Mike Portillo on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. The Iranian regime has imposed an internet and phone blackout, so it's difficult to know what is now going on in the country. There are reports of huge numbers of bodies being brought to hospitals. President Trump has said that he would use military force if the regime killed protesters. Has the time come for the United States to do so? The Iranian flag was torn down by protesters at the embassy in London. And it was replaced with the flag from before the Islamic Revolution, which shows a lion and sun. Joining me now in the studio is Colonel Simon Diggins, former British Army officer in the Middle East and a defence analyst. Simon, welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
Lots of people are saying that although there have been protests, possibly on this scale even before, which have failed, which have been crushed with terrible loss of life, that this time is different. And this time might be different in particular because the prestige of the regime has been very badly dented by its massive failures in foreign policy and the effectiveness of attacks against it by Israel and by the United States. Do you take the view that this time is different?
I think I do. I mean, you're absolutely right about this sort of like the cutting of the heads of people like the sort of Hezbollah, Hamas and the Houthis that's gone on, and the strikes against the Iranian nuclear program in July by Israel and America. But the other thing I think is internal in terms of to what's going on inside Iran itself. This is probably the most widespread sort of protests that have been, and you're right, there's been a whole series of protests going back over decades now against the regime at various stages. But the scale of it, I think, is different. Some 31 provinces of Iran, and there are protests reported in every single one of them. Hard to know what's going on in detail at the moment because of the internet news blackout, but this does seem to be on a sort of different scale from the protests that have occurred in the past.
If the scale is different, does it mean that the result will be different?
No, that's more problematic, I think, because one thing that we've got to deal with is the IRGC. It's not just the regime itself.
Spell out for us what that is.
Apologies, of course, yes, the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps. And they're they're kind of the foot soldiers, both ideological and real, of the IRGC, of the regime in Iran. Their role is to protect the theocratic revolution, protect the mullahs, and to protect the state. And they've been responsible for everything from the nuclear program through to sponsorship of the terrorist organisations that have been operating across the Middle East, and indeed, as we just discovered in Venezuela, with Hezbollah as well. And they're also responsible for internal suppression. And they're large. You know, we're talking about 125,000 regulars, members of the IRGC. They've got a whole militia organisation behind them, the so-called Basij. They've got some 90,000 people who work full-time for them, and they can call on millions of people who've had some kind of military training. And they've got an economic state in the country. I mean, they have got their own economy, basically. They're a parastatal organisation. They own businesses, they own companies, and basically they run a sort of parallel economy. So they're going to be very hard to dislodge. I think that's the real challenge as far as this particular set of protests is concerned.
I read reports saying that the Ayatollah had transferred responsibility for handling these protests from the more regular kind of police forces to the IRGC. That would perhaps tell us two things. I mean, firstly, perhaps that he doesn't trust the other security forces. But secondly, that the IRGC now has complete control of this, and they have shown a record of horrendous brutality.
Absolutely. Brutality, repression. We've got fairly good reporting coming through. They're actually taking people out of hospital. People have been wounded, injured, have been dragged out of hospital without being given medical care as well. I think that gives you a scale, size and scale of the level of brutalities which they are capable of as well. So yes, that is, I think, a disturbing sign for the future, and also gives you an indication as to what we need to do if we're going to tip this revolution over, or tip this revolt over, and actually get rid of Khamenei and the IRGC.
Well, President Trump said a few days ago that if the regime killed protesters, he would intervene. It looks to me as though that threshold has been crossed. I mean, I think we can be pretty clear that protesters have been killed in quite large numbers. What are the options for the United States?
Well, I think one of the things they'd look at, and they've done it in the past, is go after the leadership. Go after the leadership of the regime itself, the Khamenei, the mullahs who surround him, but also go after the IRGC leadership as well. And that's something where we could do something as well. It is absolutely...
We, Britain?
Yeah, we don't have... Well, we could start with actually prescribing the IRGC. And quite extraordinary that the IRGC is not a prescribed organisation in this country. There's been all sorts of opposition from the Foreign Office saying, oh, we need to talk to them. We don't need to talk to them. We need to get rid of them, and we need to do everything possible to get rid of them. And if the Americans say we're going to go in and get stuck in and do that, we should back them up and we should support them.
Do you think Israel will want to be a part of any action?
I think so. And one of the interesting that came out from the attacks in July was that very interesting speech that Netanyahu made to the Iranian people, and he basically said, your time is coming. We want Iran as friends for the future, and we know that your regime is going to fall. So my suspicion is the Israelis have got quite a good way in to understand quite well what's going on inside Iranian society, perhaps more so than other people, will know the people who might just be the beginnings of an opposition party that could take over from Khamenei and the IRGC.
What the Israelis apparently know for sure is the whereabouts of people. They know how to assassinate people. Presumably that intelligence would be supplied to the United States if it was deemed better for the United States to undertake the operation.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when they conducted those operations in July, they're very closely coordinated between the Israeli military and the American military. And it was, I think, at the end of it, came down to very much to a sort of technical decision about who's got the best weapons fit and best targeting ability for particular weapon systems. So I suspect that kind of level of coordination is ongoing at the moment. I'd like to think it was, anyway.
At one time, it would have been a powerful argument for the regime with its people to say, look, it's clear that you are in cahoots with Israel, you're in cahoots with the United States. These are two devil powers. These are the enemies of the state. These are the enemies of God in their terms. But I guess that argument washes less than it used to.
I think that's right. I think they use that sort of theocratic argument, the ideological argument, very strongly, and they try to hide the disaster which was the internal economy of Iran by their kind of foreign adventures. The dismemberment of Hamas, the destruction of Hezbollah, the attacks on the Islamic State militias in Iraq and the Houthis, I think has removed that argument. So that pretense that Iran was really going to be able to take on the great Satan, America, I think, has long since gone. And I think the Iranian people are no longer distracted by those promises or those kind of ideological sort of threats to the rest of the world.
Let's speculate for the moment that there is regime change, although, given the level of brutality, there may well not be.
Indeed.
But let's speculate that there is. In the case of Iraq, maybe a terrible error was made in that everything that was associated with Saddam, with the Ba'ath Party, was swept away and the place was left with no sort of government at all. The Venezuelan model appears to be at the other end of the spectrum, that only the president and his wife are removed. What do you think the model might be in Iran?
It's going to have to be somewhere between the two. I mean, clearly there are members of the IRGC who are there because it's the most powerful party in most powerful force inside Iran, and they might be persuadable to come on side. But there'll be lots of other people who will just say, no, you've got to get rid of them as well. The challenge is who's going to do that? Who's going to be responsible for that? Because there is no appetite whatsoever for an Iraq or Afghanistan type invasion of Iran. Indeed, I can't imagine anything more problematic than trying to do that. So how do we find that kind of middle place between not removing everybody who's got an IRGC label on them and this rather say coup light, which is what's happened in Venezuela with Maduro, leaving in place apparently the regime, but with Marco Rubio sending instructions down the line to the new president.
Let's come down to the human level. You've been a soldier. Can you understand these teenagers? Can you understand these pensioners who are out in the streets at the moment, knowing that they may well be killed, and if they're not killed, they may be taken off to prison and tortured? Can you understand what is motivating them to do these incredibly courageous acts?
I think, absolute moral clarity that the regime they've been supporting has basically misled them. And has been a disaster for them and for their country. And then just sheer raw courage. And I absolutely salute them for what they're trying to do. I very recently read that excellent book, Persepolis, and that gives you a sense of the scale to which the Iranians want to have a different future and deserve a different future. So I think they're looking at it and going, do you know what? I've got nothing to lose here. I might only be 19, I might only be 20, I might be 70. I have nothing to lose here, but I will prepare to give my life, sacrifice my life to remove the Iranian regime. That's extraordinarily powerful, and we've got to respond to it.
Yes, apparently, many of them are saying things like, we are dead already. Yeah. We have no life under this regime. Yeah. Therefore, we're prepared to give our lives. And the fact is, of course, that if a revolution is successful, then some thousands give their lives, that millions may live under a different kind of regime.
Absolutely. And I think that's the power of that. It's something which, for all our petty politics here, we don't really get that level of kind of drama. But that's exactly what the Iranian people are doing, and I think we should salute.
Simon, thank you very much indeed for your wise words. Let's take a quick look at a protest taking place outside Downing Street this morning, carried out by the Association of Anglo-Iranian Women. So we can see quite a large crowd there. They're gathered on the opposite side of the road from 10 Downing Street. We can see the Ministry of Defence, the white building in the background there. It's quite a substantial gathering, and they're supporting the uprising for a democratic republic and the overthrow of religious fascism by uprising and resistance. I'm just quoting there from the placards. Simon Diggins, thank you very much for being with us today. Coming up, the Chancellor of the Exchequer is expected to unveil yet another U-turn by announcing a financial package to rescue pubs. Publican and Telegraph food critic William Sitwell will join me to discuss. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We're gradually losing the wintry conditions we've seen across the UK in recent days. Things turning milder, but with some wet and windy weather in store at times during the week ahead. Certainly looking at the pressure pattern, it's an unsettled picture here. Low pressure anchored towards the northwest of the UK, tightly packed isobars indicating those blustery winds, and that will bring outbreaks of rain in from the southwest at times too. So looking at things in more detail for this afternoon, still some snow for a time and some freezing rain across the northeast of England, eastern parts of Scotland, but milder areas pushing in from the southwest, so gradually turning wet and windy across all parts. Certainly a pretty wet afternoon to come in most areas. Very blustery up towards the north of Scotland. The northeast of Scotland seeing severe gales at times. Still quite chilly in the east, but turning milder, as I say, from the west. As we head into the evening, we'll still hold on to some outbreaks of snow across the high ground of northeast Scotland, but elsewhere across the country it's a very wet picture. Some very blustery winds still towards the north and west of Scotland especially. Some heavy outbreaks of rain across the south and west of Scotland. Some heavy rain too across parts of Northern Ireland. Some heavy rain across northwest England. Notice some hill fog across the Pennines there. And further south, some hill fog and also some blustery winds for outbreaks of rain sweeping in from the southwest. So all in all, a pretty unsettled end to the day, and we hold on to these unsettled conditions across the UK as we head through the evening into the overnight period too. The rain in the south will give way to clearer spells and showers, but it's very blustery across the northwest of Scotland. Gales or severe gales likely here, and rain never too far away from the northwest of Scotland. But notice a much milder end to the night than we've seen in recent nights, generally frost-free going into Monday morning. As for Monday itself, well, the south of the UK could well see some bright spells for a while, but showers will push in from the southwest, merging to give some longer spells of rain at times. Blustery up towards the north, still those gales to contend with, certainly through the morning, and further outbreaks of showery rain here, again especially towards the north and west of Scotland, but milder than recent days with temperatures in places, certainly towards the southeast, into double figures.
Do you trust what you're being told?
Good, because
because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to
stop.
You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. We're going to take a moment now to hear our daily reflection.
The GB News Daily Reflection.
My name's Marcus Mack. I'm a vicar in the Church of England. Do you have a favourite place on earth? Mine is Gonos Beach in Cyprus, not just because it is a mini paradise, but because I've had many happy family memories there. When Jesus was 12 years old, he went alone to his favourite place. Unknowingly, he remained in Jerusalem while his parents began the return journey home. They went back to search for him, and after 3 days, found him in the temple. When his parents asked why he had caused them so much anxiety, Jesus said, "Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?" The temple was where people could meet with God, and Jesus loved spending time with his Father in heaven. Being in the presence of God is heaven on earth. Falling in love with God is the greatest romance. Seeking him is the greatest adventure. Finding him, the greatest human achievement. We don't need to go to the temple to meet with God, because Jesus has become for us the true temple of the living God. And we can draw close to him wherever we are and experience heaven on earth.
Treasury sources have told GB News that they had been unaware of the scale of the tax increases faced by pubs following the budget. Government ministers added this week that they recognise the vital social need that pubs fulfil in UK communities. So now we can expect a U-turn by the Chancellor. Joining me now is the restaurant critic from The Telegraph, and now the director of the White Hart Pub and Restaurant, William Sitwell. Hello, William. Welcome to GB News.
Good morning, Michael.
Now, if things are so ghastly, why on earth have you become a publican now?
It's a very good question. And yeah, I went mad. There's this beautiful old coaching inn called the White Hart in Wiveliscombe, just on the edge of Exmoor, not far from the Quantocks and the Blackdowns. And tragically, it closed in the summer. And I just didn't believe that this beautiful building, this 16-bedroom hotel that stands proud on the square of Wiveliscombe, should have closed. I believe that there was a market for this, actually. And in spite of the fact that I've been writing about restaurants for 25 years or so, I know the pitfalls and the pain. It just annoyed me so much that it had closed that I decided to throw my hat in the ring and go into business with a local publican, a wonderful man called John Coward, who runs the Bear opposite and a number of other pubs. And we thought, let's do it, let's open it. And so we opened on December the 1st, and it's been a storm of emotional and physical torture. Some ups, some downs, one very fiery Greek barman, some interesting customers, and some very dodgy economic circumstances. So having written about it, I am now appreciating the headwinds that this industry faces full on.
And your new experiences make for great new columns, so you're feeding your other job at the same time. But tell me now some practical examples of the headwinds that you're facing. I mean, for example, your rates bill on your pub. What's going to be the increase there?
The increase for me was about 79%, up from about 15,000 to 33,500. My business partner, John Coward's increase is 134%. These are the mooted increases. And, you know, we hear that the Treasury are thinking about a U-turn. And as usual, the government have this extraordinary new policy of live wargaming policies on the nation and then seeing the effects of them and then changing their mind. This is exactly the same situation when, you know, hospitality lobbied the Treasury before that first budget after Labour took over, at which point the government imposed the increase in employers' national insurance. And then from my sources in hospitality who've been speaking to the Treasury, they say the Treasury was surprised at the reaction. So it seems that they don't really understand how small businesses work. So we've faced the prospect of these business rates increases, but also the attempt to sort of, it's a sort of socialist idea really, sounds wonderful, protect young people by increasing their wages. But if you increase minimum wages, you actually stop pubs from employing young people. You don't take the risk of putting inexperienced people on the floor of your dining room or behind the bar. We face margins decrease. We face increased costs of utility bills, and also we face cultural problems, or you could say advances. January is specifically the case with this because you have Veganuary, where we're all supposed to embrace plant-based products, and there's not a lot of margin in a turnip. And when you add on dry January, there's less margin in a lime soda than there is on a vodka lime and soda. So we have cultural and economic headwinds.
And by the way, William, do you think that people leaving your pub with 80 milligrams of alcohol in their blood are likely to have an accident? And do you think those accidents would be prevented if that 80 milligrams were reduced to 50 milligrams?
I'm quite torn on this subject, to be honest. As a father with, you know, kids who are in their early 20s, my rule is you don't drink and drive full stop. And I think that is a sensible principle. So I have less problems with this, to be honest. I think that the margins of alcohol and driving depends upon the person, depends upon the amount of food they've eaten. I don't think there's quite enough science on this. So I think for most people, you know, half a pint is fine to drive, but I would find it quite hard to argue on a principle of that. I think generally speaking, you shouldn't drink and drive. And so I can appreciate it.
That's a very interesting point of view, although you made the point in the middle of your answer that one ought to, decisions should be evidence-based. So, of course, you know, if I see the evidence, I'm willing to be convinced, but I haven't seen the evidence base for the proposed change. Anyway, very good luck to you. I hope it goes well. Congratulations to you on saving your pub, and let's see whether we're going to have a U-turn. And I can tell you that in response to those reports of a U-turn, the House of Commons leader, Alan Campbell, said the Prime Minister has been listening and he's looking actively at further measures to help pubs and the hospitality industry, whether these are in rural areas or in urban areas. Now, coming up, Elon Musk has labelled the outcry against Grok AI, an application that can remove the clothes from the image of a woman or a child, as an excuse for censorship. Is it? This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. It's nice and calm across the Canary Islands at the moment. Plenty of winter sunshine, but cold across parts of Italy. So you can see plenty of sunshine into Monday across Tenerife there. Madeira seeing some sunny spells. A band of rain across northern parts of Portugal and Spain stretching into France, but pleasant conditions across Italy. But cold across Greece into Turkey. A weather system clearing here, but a frost at night time. Slowly warming up over the next few days there.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. The government is urging Ofcom to act within days over Elon Musk's X after its Grok AI was used to create sexualized deep fakes that digitally undressed people without their consent. Ministers say the regulator must consider all options, including blocking the platform in the United Kingdom. Mr. Musk has called the outcry against his platform an excuse for censorship. Joining me now is Arabella Skinner, the Director of Health Professionals for Safer Screens. Arabella, good morning. Welcome to GB News.
Well, Michael.
Can you tell me something about how the law in this country stands? If somebody uses Grok AI to create a naked image of a child, I would rather guess that that constitutes a crime. Can you help me with that? Does it?
Yes, underneath the Online Safety Act within the Children's Code, yes, it does. We have issues around porn and not showing porn. Also showing child sexual imagery is fundamentally against the law. And the challenge really is whether Ofcom will have the teeth to ensure that the law is held practice. We've had a weird situation in this country where it's only last summer we've actually had legislation that has stopped children theoretically seeing porn on screen and online. I mean, it's a mad situation. We have rules across everything else we see. We had, film ages, we have laws around watersheds, but we didn't have this online. And so we've only just put in age verification for pornography. But we know that this there's been no one's been, we've had a couple of things come from Ofcom, but the process is incredibly slow. And companies from particularly the US, where most of them are based, are just ignoring this. So if we want to protect our children, and it is madness to even have this conversation, because no one can accept that having child sexual imagery, whether that is live or AI generated, is an acceptable thing. And we have changed the dynamic of what we believe is normal in the world with online world and AI.
I rather imagine that creating a naked image of an adult would not be against the law. Would I be right about that?
The nudification app is coming. The law against nudification apps is coming through the crime and policing bill, so it will be coming up fairly soon. At the moment, it isn't. Although there are elements around revenge porn. So there is legal around revenge porn.
Yes.
As you'll know, we managed to make this exceptionally complex, rather than things that you think would be automatic would automatically come onto online from offline. But this is being covered under the crime and policing bill. But we are getting very caught up in different stories around, Elon Musk is talking about censorship. And yes, we have to be very careful about free speech. It's incredibly important when we're talking about children, and we're talking about protecting our children in terms of what they are seeing, but also how they are being treated. The increase in child sexual abuse online is astronomical. And what's really disturbing is huge amounts of that content is self-generated by children. It is children groomed through social media, very young children. It was rising to sort of 65% growth last year in 7 to 10-year-olds producing content that they are sharing online. And that is really terrifying, and it is not normal. And we know, our health professionals see this on a day-to-day basis, that the impact of this kind of experience that our children are having, and what they are finding online. Twitter is a really interesting, or X is a really interesting one, in that we know that about half of 13-year-olds have seen pornography. 27% of children has seen it within primary school, which is an awful statistic. And they don't tend to go and find it. But in some of the latest data, it suggests that 45% of the content that they found on X, and they're finding on Snapchat and not necessarily porn sites in other places. So we need to be absolutely protecting our children, because once they've seen this content, it can't be unseen. It's there, and it is changing the relationships our children have with their relationships with other people, and their relationships with romantic relationships and sexual relationships, which has a massive long-term impact. And we're seeing that through the work that our GPs and psychiatrists and psychologists are doing, because they're trying to help and support children long-term with what they're seeing and where it's coming out.
Arabella Skinner, thank you very much indeed. It will be very interesting indeed to see how this battle is resolved between now the British government and Ofcom and X. In response, X has now limited the use of AI image function to those who pay a monthly fee. And in an earlier statement, X said anyone using prompting Grok to make illegal content will suffer the same consequences as if they upload illegal content. And Ofcom said they're undertaking expedited assessments as a matter of urgency. Now, that concludes the first hour of Sunday with Mike Portillo, but please rejoin me at noon for more discussion on current affairs, politics, theatre and literature. You're watching GB News. It is Britain's news channel. We're going to be coming back with Stefan Kyriazis' theatre reviews and a fascinating discussion about international law. See you at noon.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We're gradually losing the wintry conditions we've seen across the UK in recent days. Things turning milder, but with some wet and windy weather in store at times during the week ahead. Certainly looking at the pressure pattern, it's an unsettled picture here. Low pressure anchored towards the northwest of the UK. tightly packed isobars indicating those blustery winds, and that will bring outbreaks of rain in from the southwest at times too. So looking at things in more detail for this afternoon, still some snow for a time and some freezing rain across the northeast of England, eastern parts of Scotland, but milder areas pushing in from the southwest, so gradually turning wet and windy across all parts. Certainly a pretty wet afternoon to come in most areas. Very blustery up towards the north of Scotland, the northeast of Scotland seeing severe gales at times. Still quite chilly in the east, but turning milder, as I say, from the west. As we head into the evening, we'll still hold on to some outbreaks of snow across the high ground of northeast Scotland, but elsewhere across the country it's a very wet picture. Some very blustery winds still towards the north and west of Scotland especially. Some heavy outbreaks of rain across the south and west of Scotland. Some heavy rain too across parts of Northern Ireland. Some heavy rain across northwest England. Notice some hill fog across the Pennines there. And further south, some hill fog and also some blustery winds for outbreaks of rain sweeping in from the southwest. So all in all, a pretty unsettled end to the day, and we hold on to these unsettled conditions across the UK as we head through the evening into the overnight period too. The rain in the south will give way to clearer spells and showers, but it's very blustery across the northwest of Scotland. Gales or severe gales likely here, and rain never too far away from the northwest of Scotland. But notice a much milder end to the night than we've seen in recent nights, generally frost-free going into Monday morning. As for Monday itself, well, the south of the UK could well see some bright spells for a while, but showers will push in from the southwest, merging to give some longer spells of rain at times. Blustery up towards the north, still those gales to contend with, certainly through the morning, and further outbreaks of showery rain here, again especially towards the north and west of Scotland, but milder than recent days with temperatures in places, certainly towards the southeast, into double figures.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. Just make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful, a bit more akin to Britain's Christian heritage.
That's right, get ready, because the most exciting night in general election history starts now!
May I be amongst the first to wish you a good afternoon. In the wasteland, T.S. Eliot writes enigmatically, "Winter kept us warm, covering Earth in forgetful snow." After this last week, you may doubt that winter keeps us warm, but huddle around for Sunday with Michael Portillo for another hour of arts, culture, current affairs and politics. What is the value of international law? Did it protect Ukraine? Should it have shielded Nicolas Maduro? My panel returns to debate those questions. Britain is pledging military involvement, supporting moves to intervene against sanctions-busting oil tankers and promising troops to Ukraine. How far can we and should we commit? Theatre critic Stefan Kyriazis will give us his take on Woman in Mind and Giselle. And the opening chapters of books are shrinking to fit the reducing attention spans of the TikTok generation. I'll discuss that with an author. All of that and much more. First, your news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good morning to you. It is a minute past 12. Good afternoon, I should say, here in the GB newsroom. The government says it wants to see a peaceful transition of power in Iran as the regime continues its deadly crackdown on nationwide protests. It's understood Washington is considering military intervention after President Trump said the US is ready to help protesters find freedom amid reports hundreds of people have been killed by security forces. Authorities have imposed a communications blackout and they're warning any attack by US attack on its forces will be retaliated against. They're calling for an end to the clerical rule of Iran's supreme leader. But former chair of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood, says that is unlikely to improve Iranians' lives.
The question is what happens next, and there's talk about this, the son of the Shah returning. I think that's very, very unlikely. There is no national coordination between all those that are angry. And the caution is that the most powerful body that remains is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, which is enormous and owns much of society, much of the economy. And they are likely to come down and very, very hard indeed. So we'd end up possibly seeing an autocratic theocracy replaced by a military dictatorship.
The US says it's carried out a number of strikes against the Islamic State group in Syria. Saturday's offensive was part of Operation Hawkeye Strike, the US response to an IS attack which claimed the lives of 2 American soldiers and an interpreter in Palmyra last month. Now, this footage shared by US Central Command shows a series of explosions in Syria. It's not clear where the strikes took place or if there were any casualties. Sir Keir Starmer is reportedly in talks with European allies about deploying military personnel to Greenland. It follows threats from President Trump. He says the US needs the island for security reasons. President Trump's threatened to seize it the easy way or the hard way. It's understood the plans would involve British soldiers, warships and planes being deployed as part of NATO force to counter the threat from Russia and China. European nations hope it will persuade Mr Trump to abandon his plans to annex the island. The Conservatives say they would ban under-16s from social media if they were in power. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch has pledged smartphones would also be banned in schools to protect children's mental health and education. They're intending to follow the example of Australia, which became the first country to introduce the policy last month. The teaching union, the NASUWTs, also called for the move. The government doesn't currently support the ban, but says it is taking action to ensure children can only access age-appropriate content online. The boss of Wetherspoons says perverse taxes are driving up the price of a pint and are responsible for a staggering loss in beer sales. His comments come as the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, expected to announce a rescue package for pubs, with many facing closure as a result of higher business rates announced in the budget. Sir Tim Martin says it's because pubs pay 20% VAT on food, whereas supermarkets pay nothing.
It's widened the price gap for a pint between going to a pub and a supermarket, and pubs since the year 2000 have lost 50% of their beer sales. And on top of that now you've had very punitive tax and wage increases from government legislation, the last two budgets in particular. So you now have a crisis.
More wintry weather is expected to batter the UK as warnings for snow, ice, wind and rain remain in place. Storm Grati resulted in challenging conditions for most parts of the UK over the past few days. More snow has been predicted in Scotland later. The southwest was hit with winds of almost 100 miles per hour. Police say a man in his 50s was killed after a tree fell on his caravan in Cornwall. The cold snap, though, and the challenging conditions are set to ease this week with the arrival of milder weather. There's your headlines. Now it's back to Michael.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you, Aaron Armstrong. Those who oppose President Trump's seizure of Nicolas Maduro say that it sets a dangerous precedent that Russia and China will seize to violate international law. But how has international law protected the persecuted Uyghurs against China? How did it make Putin hesitate before invading Ukraine? What purpose does international law serve beyond offering comfort to tyrants and drug barons? Joining me again is my panel, the former Conservative advisor Jennifer Powers and the former Labour Party chair Baroness Hayter. Welcome back to you both. Jennifer, what's your reaction to the question?
Well, I think that we're entering a new era in global politics. I think that the period since the Second World War is in many ways an aberration from global history. And I think whilst there are certainly elements of international rules-based order that we should mourn, the reality is we need to focus on the challenges that we as Britain and the West face and get to grips with that. Only this week, President Trump signed an executive memorandum withdrawing the United States from 66 international organizations and treaties. I think the only one who hasn't come to grips with this is Keir Starmer. He's clearly not gotten the memo that the world has changed.
Which are the bits that have gone that you mourn? You said you mourned some.
Well, listen, I think, we all aspire to a world where countries respect each other's sovereignty, where human rights are respected, where we cooperate for increased trade and prosperity, and those are good things. However, the reality is that international law was only ever adhered to when it suited people's self-interest, whether that was materially or whether that was, in the case of some Western nations, when it suited them reputationally or indeed, made them feel good in some sort of performative way.
Yeah, Diane, I imagine you disagree with the proposition set up in this question, but isn't it at least the case that people who are claiming now that what Trump has done is going to undermine international law ignore the fact that international law has not restrained tyrants and bad people from doing bad things at all?
Well, there's two bits of international law. There's a whole lot which, in a sense, reflects some of the things Jennifer said about trade, about how currency moves, about how the law at sea makes sure our ships all keep to the same rules, and aeroplanes use the same system. There's an awful lot of international law which is really, really important, and on the whole has not been threatened. I think, though, the early thing, or not, that Trump did some time ago, of suddenly changing tariffs was a really bad early signal, because all of that is normally done internationally, and it means everyone knows where they are, and it helps business. So I think there is a whole bit of international law that probably hasn't been touched, is really important, and we do need to hold fast to that, because that's good for everyone. But the second point, really, is more, I think, taking what Jennifer said. I think we are facing a wholly different world at the moment of, I'm afraid, strong, autocratic men. It appears uncontrolled by their own electorate or their own colleagues. I mean, it's interesting, the first Trump presidency, a number of us were reassured that there were enough people around him in Washington to make sure that it would stay his hand. That group seems to have disappeared. And there's something about these strong men where they have managed to take to themselves as individuals power that really is out of kilter with their people. And we're seeing that now with Iran. That is really frightening, because because we're so internationally global now, it destabilises, I think, all of us. But I think it's not the question of international law that's challenging this. It's this particular people at a particular time in history.
Jennifer made the point that Keir Starmer hasn't got the memo. And, I mean, Britain continues to adhere to all sorts of conventions that seem to make our lives very problematic. I mean, for example, we're absolutely signed up to net zero. I think China and the United States are absolutely howling with laughter as we do so. We're unable to prevent the boats landing on our beaches, even though, I mean, actually, this is destroying the government, but it can't do anything about it because we're signed up to international conventions. We're subject to the European Court of Human Rights. How strong do you think the support for international law is amongst the British people, at least as they conceive what international law achieves?
I think it's probably stronger than we think. I think that people do respect, in this country, the rule of law enormously. And we do expect, and we are safeguarded by our laws. And when we go abroad, for example, we know that our driving licences will be respected there, because we have this system of international law. So I think that if we think about it, people are... I think the issue that Keir Starmer absolutely understands is that this is a time now where we have to use every international lever that we've got to try and restrain the particular ambitions of some of these leaders, and particularly their treatment of their own people. Now, that is a difficult one. That really, does challenge, should we interfere with other countries?
I think it was difficult to restrain Jennifer during your answer. Jennifer, what was it you were keen to say?
I just think you're conflating respect for domestic law, for national law, with international law. I mean, international law, look, law only works if it's enforceable. And therefore, international law has only ever... been maintained when there was a global power or powers who were willing to enforce it. And so this idea that there's a great domestic support for the fiction of international law, I think is nonsense. And also I think it's not just about personalities. Now, I'm not saying that Trump isn't a huge personality and that American policy isn't driven by what he wants. Of course it is. But the work of the United States and this new defense strategy and their new geopolitical strategy is far deeper and far wider than the president himself. It goes through the whole defense establishment. It goes through the vice president and J.D. Vance, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. I mean, the whole idea that they accept that America is a waning global power, that we're entering an era of multipolarity, that it doesn't work anymore to have this fiction of international law. And let's put to one side the driver's license and shipping and transport. Absolutely, those contractual law points, those are fine. We're talking about international law as we understand it with regard to treaties and war and peace. They recognize that in this new era of multipolarity, the United States needs to retrench. It needs to defend itself. It needs to protect and enhance its self-interest, and it's willing to do so. I mean, going in and kidnapping Maduro
obvious American self-interest, not just for oil, but listen, Iran was active in the country, Russia, China was active in the country. So this is really not just about reasserting authority for the sake of it. This is about supporting the dollar as an international currency. This is about having control over energy, and this is about making sure American allies are not active in its hemisphere. So I think this is huge and transformative, and I think Britain needs to wake up.
Diana, Jennifer makes the point that law needs to be enforceable. And there have been howls from the usual suspects as soon as international law has been enforced against Nicolas Maduro. I mean, there was huge international consensus that this man should be arraigned for criminal charges. But as soon as it's enforced, as I say, the usual suspects throw their hands in the air.
But what we've got, we do have an international criminal court, and we have taken other leaders to court, and some of them are serving very long-term
only when
prisons.
their regimes have fallen.
Yes, they're only when their regimes have fallen.
By the way, some of them toppled by us. I mean, I'm thinking of people like Karadzic.
Indeed. And I think that should hold... I mean, and the fact that, Putin really can't travel now very far around the world because of international law, because he would be arrested.
It's not international law that stops him
went,
travelling. It's the fact that there are Western powers with force
but they would
who threaten him. So ultimately, you're proving my point, I think.
And by the way, the Western powers have allowed him perfectly well to go to Alaska, which is part of the United States. I'm sorry, Dan, we interrupt you.
But I mean, I think the important thing is that what we have to do now is to hold back on people like Trump, that they should be threatening to break up NATO. It is the most important ally that we've got. And the idea that he could even think about invading a NATO country. I think the response of Starmer is absolutely correct. If we had a NATO force within Greenland, but with the UK there, that is the way of doing it. But hold NATO together. That is an international law.
Diane, what is your response to the person who says, I see that international law is absolutely unable to restrain China or Russia, but as soon as something is done against a recognised criminal tyrant and drug baron, the world howls that international law has been breached. In other words, it appears to be defending the wrong people.
Well, I think that there is a value judgment that you can make about how you do these things. I think walking into another country and interfering with that, as opposed to their own people doing it, is always very, very difficult, and being done without the authority of Congress within the United States. I mean, one of the things we always ought to stand up for is, yes, being able to take action when it has the will of the people or its elected representatives. And I do think that there will be people, I know there are people in the States, in the Senate and in the House, who would not agree to, for example, the invasion, an invasion into Greenland. So I think we have to hold on to our belief in democracy and controlling the leaders, and we should never let go of that.
Well, I think it's a most interesting topic, and I think you've both done it justice. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Jennifer Powers and Baroness Hayter. Now, time for the Great British Giveaway, and time is ticking on your chance to become our biggest cash prize winner to date. Here are the details that you need.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. What would you spend all of that cash on? 2026 could be the year you spend more time spending, with an incredible £85,000 in your bank. Just make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 9th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Coming up, intercepting Venezuelan oil tankers and preparing troops for Ukraine. What else should Britain's military be doing? This is Sunday with Mike Portillo, only on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Samantha, Jeffrey, thank you for your time tonight on The Late Show Live. Really appreciate it. This is a story that, amongst all the stories of wars and murders and crime and so on, at least it's given us a laugh, and at least the raccoon is okay. Just explain to us, if you can, Samantha, exactly what happened. Where was the raccoon found? Where is he now? Who found him and so on?
Yeah, so the store manager went to open up the ABC store here in Ashland, Virginia, and discovered a bunch of broken bottles in the back room. Upon further investigation, he was also located a raccoon that was passed out in one of the bathrooms. He had locked himself in the bathroom, and that's when the store manager called us to get him.
So first things first, how on earth did he end up in the store? How did he get in there?
So he fell through the ceiling. So he went through a ceiling tile and took out the wiring for the video camera as he was falling down. So we don't have a whole lot to go off of, just what the evidence that we encountered when we got to the scene of the crime.
So he fell through the ceiling, and I guess he landed on, because there's pictures here we've got of bottles of, I think it's whiskey, just strewn all over the store. So he must have fallen through the ceiling onto the shelves, smashed all the bottles, and then I guess from there thought it was going to be a great idea to, lap up all the alcohol on the floor?
I guess so. He just decided to have a party.
And who found him?
The store manager.
And what was their reaction? Have you spoken to them? What were their first sort of comments to you when I guess they called you to report the raccoon passed out in the bathroom, right?
Yeah, they were a little bit distraught. They didn't know how to get him out. They obviously did not want to pick him up themselves. So that's why they called us for assistance.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. The Defence Secretary John Healey said that the British contribution to seizing a Russian-flagged oil tanker in the Atlantic demonstrated Britain's commitment to upholding maritime security. It comes as he announced that Britain will spend £200 million preparing troops to be deployed to Ukraine. Joining me now is the leading analyst in European defence and Russia at Chatham House, Keir Giles. Keir, welcome to GB News. Welcome to the programme. First of all, do you believe that Britain will be able to make the sort of commitment of troops on the ground to Ukraine if called upon to do so?
I think we have to hope and trust at the moment that this bluff is not called. It doesn't matter which defence experts, which experts on the British military, which observers of the Ukraine war you ask, there is nobody other than government spokesmen who think that this is a viable option, even if they have some understanding of what in fact is planned. Now, the optimists might think that there's a level of sophistication here. This promise of British and French troops being in Ukraine is going to make sure that President Putin is even less likely to acquiesce to any ceasefire proposal that's put to him by Ukraine under duress from the United States. And so it does stave off that worst-case scenario of surrender terms for Kiev actually being imposed. But, as I say, those are optimists. The worst-case scenario is that this has not been properly thought through, and the $200 million of emergency spending to get these troops personnel fit for being in a place where Russia doesn't want them to be is just an indication of how little has been spent on the British Army over preceding years to try to get them ready for the conflict that everybody saw was coming.
So, I think you're saying a number of things there. So, first of all, the troops are not ready to go. But with £200 million, have you any idea how many troops Britain might be able to send?
We see all kinds of different estimates, and really the only people who will know that for sure are those who are deeply involved in planning the operation and know what troops can be called on. Everybody outside that system is wondering how this is feasible when the British Army is already under pressure from its much smaller deployment in Estonia. As for whether or not they're ready to go, let's look at the list of things that has been publicly disclosed as to what this emergency funding is supposed to protect them against. Everything that we've seen being deployed on the front line in Ukraine over the last 4 years. So if there is this amount of catching up to do by the British Armed Forces, even for such a limited deployment as this, again, it speaks to how much has not been done in terms of spending on getting these armed forces ready for the challenge that is coming.
But in any case, as I understand it, the plan is not to send these troops to a sort of buffer zone. The plan is to send them somewhere, you know, in the back in Ukraine, where they'd be doing things like training Ukrainian troops. So, in principle, they're not going to be in a fighting role.
That is precisely the problem. If they are there not in a fighting role and not equipped to withstand the inevitable tests that Russia is going to throw their way, then that is potentially disastrous. Because it's always been known that the worst thing to do is to go into Ukraine, then suffer casualties and realize you have to pull out. Far worse than not going in the first place. That means that wherever these people are going to be, wherever these so-called hubs are going to be set up for enabling and assisting the Ukrainian armed forces, they have to be defensible because they will be tested. It's the one defining feature of Russia's attitude to ceasefires. They don't agree to ceasefires that they cannot violate at will and that don't allow them to restart the conflict when they feel ready.
Keir, do you have any idea what our contribution was in intercepting the oil tanker in the Atlantic? I mean, you give the impression, and I receive the impression, the British Armed Forces are really not capable of very much at all. So what do you think we were able to contribute to the seizing of the tanker?
Well, as ever, there will be the small amount that's publicly disclosed and probably a great deal more that probably will never come to light. The biggest contribution from the UK, of course, was simply being there, providing a base from which the United States could reach this vessel. But there are a lot of unanswered questions, not just about the contribution and the capability, but also about why this happened. We still don't know, for example, why this vessel was treated as so special that unlike all of the other vessels that are part of Russia's shadow fleet, unlike all of the other ones that have been in and out of Venezuela, for example, not to mention through the Baltic Sea, heading to Russia and back, why this one required such a concerted effort to intercept it. It's an unanswered question, and very noticeably since then, it's all gone very quiet about where this vessel is, where it is heading, what was discovered on board.
What is your answer to the question that we spend so many tens of billions of pounds on defence, and yet apparently are under strain putting a small number of troops into Estonia, and now find it almost unthinkable to put a small number of troops into Ukraine? What is happening to all that money?
There is a great deal of disquiet about the fact that there is this disproportion, apparently, between what is spent and what is actually available to buy. Part of the problem is the ongoing British determination to be able to do a little bit of everything, to have armed forces that are capable across the board instead of limiting ambition and scaling down. What that means is that you have bonsai armed forces that are small in scale but multi-capable, and that, of course, is not an efficient way of structuring your armed forces. Now, when we come to the reductions in spending and therefore the reductions in capability over the preceding 30 years, buying that back, reinstalling all of the things that should have been there all along, building up the capacity to actually be ready for 21st century warfare is a great deal more expensive than if it had been maintained all along. And if the successive cuts to capability under different governments over those 30 years hadn't been pushed through with such determination.
But my point is, although we've been spending less, at least adjusted for inflation, we have been spending. And I wonder to what extent we've been spending on the right things. I mean, for example, what value are we getting from 2 aircraft carriers, which are very expensive to build and very expensive to maintain, and we find ourselves in a position where, for us, they're impossible to defend?
I'm not going to comment on how the Royal Navy might go about defending these aircraft carriers. I don't entirely buy into the narrative that they are simply floating targets and immensely vulnerable. But there are other key points about where the money goes. The promises that we've heard from the British government, not just under Labour, but even beforehand, of meeting NATO targets are fundamentally deceptive. Not only because of the proportion of the budget that goes on the nuclear deterrent, but also because of all of the accounting fudges that have happened over years to try to pretend that we're meeting the targets. We were a leading spender in NATO on defence behind the United States, meeting that 2% commitment and nobody else did. We've accelerated rapidly backwards down the ranks of those countries that are actually willing to spend on defence. In fact, now among the JEF, the Joint Expeditionary Force countries, of which the UK is supposed to be the framework nation, it's the UK that spends least proportionately on defence. So there's a fundamental problem of mindset, even deciding what it is that you're going to allocate to the future survival of the country before you get to the point of deciding what the output side is that is actually going to be relevant. Not all countries get it right. You can look at Poland on the front line, which has thrown billions at rearming, at rebuilding its military, at expanding, trying to get itself ready for conflict, and yet still it's blindsided by an incursion of 19 or so Russian drones, a tiny fraction of what Kiev faces every night. And yet it turns out Poland had not yet invested in the kind of integrated air and missile defence system that would be able to deal with them. The UK's problems, because it hasn't started that process, are ever so much deeper.
Okay, Giles, thank you for that very sober assessment. Coming up, Stefan Kyriazis on Woman in Mind and Giselle. But first, more news headlines from Aaron Armstrong.
Thanks, Michael. The headlines from the GB newsroom. Iran says any attack on its forces in support of anti-government demonstrations would lead to retaliation against Israel and US forces in the Middle East after Donald Trump vowed to intervene. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has blamed foreign-linked terrorists for the demonstrations. The US military's carried out multiple strikes in Syria targeting the Islamic State militant group. It's the latest response to an IS attack which claims the lives of 2 soldiers and an interpreter last month. The Prime Minister's in talks with European allies over plans to send British troops to Greenland as part of a possible NATO mission. It's hoped the move will persuade President Trump not to follow through on threats to annex the island for security reasons. The Conservatives say they would introduce age limits to curb social media use amongst the under-16s, mirroring a move made by Australia last month. Leader Kemi Badenoch says she would also prohibit smartphones in schools. And more wintry weather is expected to hit the UK as warnings for snow, ice, wind and rain remain in place. Storm Gratty brought gusts of almost 100 miles per hour and a rare red warning in the southwest, leaving seaside towns like Cadwith on the Lizard Peninsula without power. And this breaking news just into us, 4 people, including 3 teenagers, have been killed and another 5 injured after a head-on crash between 2 cars in Bolton in Greater Manchester. More on that as soon as we get it here on GB News.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We're gradually losing the wintry conditions we've seen across the UK in recent days. Things turning milder, but with some wet and windy weather in store at times during the week ahead. Certainly looking at the pressure pattern, it's an unsettled picture here. Low pressure anchored towards the northwest of the UK. Tightly packed isobars indicating those blustery winds, and that will bring outbreaks of rain in from the southwest at times too. So looking at things in more detail for this afternoon, still some snow for a time and some freezing rain across the northeast of England, eastern parts of Scotland, but milder areas pushing in from the southwest, so gradually turning wet and windy across all parts. Certainly a pretty wet afternoon to come in most areas. Very blustery up towards the north of Scotland. The northeast of Scotland seeing severe gales at times. Still quite chilly in the east, but turning milder, as I say, from the west. As we head into the evening, we'll still hold on to some outbreaks of snow across the high ground of northeast Scotland, but elsewhere across the country it's a very wet picture. Some very blustery winds still towards the north and west of Scotland especially. Some heavy outbreaks of rain across the south and west of Scotland. Some heavy rain too across parts of Northern Ireland. Some heavy rain across northwest England. Notice some hill fog across the Pennines there. And further south, some hill fog and also some blustery winds for outbreaks of rain sweeping in from the southwest. So all in all, a pretty unsettled end to the day, and we hold on to these unsettled conditions across the UK as we head through the evening into the overnight period too. The rain in the south will give way to clearer spells and showers, but it's very blustery across the northwest of Scotland. Gales or severe gales likely here, and rain never too far away from the northwest of Scotland. But notice a much milder end to the night than we've seen in recent nights, generally frost-free going into Monday morning. As for Monday itself, well, the south of the UK could well see some bright spells for a while, but showers will push in from the southwest, merging to give some longer spells of rain at times. Blustery up towards the north, still those gales to contend with, certainly through the morning, and further outbreaks of showery rain here, again especially towards the north and west of Scotland, but milder than recent days with temperatures in places, certainly towards the southeast, into double figures.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The Met Office has issued a fresh amber warning for snow for central and northeastern Scotland as heavy snowfall overnight. Tony Maguire reports to us from the Cairn Gorms. Hello, Tony. What can you tell us?
Hello, good afternoon, Michael. Well, just to give you an idea of how fast and, much these situations change, that amber warning has since been cancelled. It certainly doesn't feel like it here in the ground. The weather situation seems to be worsening by the minute here. But yeah, amber warnings for both Northern Ireland and Scotland have been taken off. However, the sleet and the slow is still coming down here. And you can maybe feel that wind picking up as well. In fact, many yellow weather warnings still in place here up in the northwest of Scotland. Now, I'm about as far north as really we've been on the channel this week so far. But the major concerns now is that with heavy rain and with the increase in temperatures coming next week, that the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency is now concerned about flooding, particularly in low-lying areas, which perhaps may be subjected to that. So lots of concern just now about what comes next, but for the minute still very cold, very chilly and quite sleety up here in the north of Scotland.
Thank you very much, Tony Maguire. Stefan Kyriazis joins me now, along with Rafa, to share their theatre reviews from the first week of 2026. Have you had a good week?
It's been a very mixed week, but lots of big things are already starting to open. And I don't know, fitting or not, it seems to be a lot of stuff about perceptions, how people see the world, what is right and wrong, mental health, in a variety of ways. And first up is Sheridan Smith, big return to the stage. She tends to do Women on the Verge. She did Shirley Valentine. She also did the catastrophic opening night, which was about an actress melting down. Disastrous show, not her fault. So this time she's back in Alan Ayckbourn. It's his 1985 play Woman in Mind, dealing with a woman that is having a breakdown and is highly, highly depressed. Most of the reviews, including me, generally feel that it's rather dated, especially in its approach to the subject matter. A lot of the reviews still found much to like. I really did not. This is much of the cast. You can see Sheridan Smith there in the chair. Ramesh Ranganathan, who's the TV comedian, is making his big stage debut. Very confident. He really... I wouldn't know that it was his debut. However, I did not like what they did with the character. So basically, he's the local GP. She is unconscious on the stage when we start. Turns out she's hit herself with the garden rake and she's concussed and she can't understand what he's saying at first. And when she does eventually come round, she can't understand why he can't see her mansion, her lake, her tennis court, her incredibly beautiful brother there that was sipping champagne, her gorgeous, glorious, posh daughter.
Yes.
But actually, we're in suburbia. She's in a tiny little back garden. She's married to a very passive-aggressive, rather unkind vicar, and living with the vicar's incredibly shrewish sister, and her son has pretty much cut off ties with both of them.
Yes.
So she does not want to deal with her reality at all. It's a black comedy. It's a farce. I get it. My problem was that actually the fake family was wonderful, and they played it up in a very Stepford way. There was an edge of menace here and there, but it was terribly jolly, Mummy, let's have champagne. Oh, Mummy, you're so fabulous, we love you. Everything she didn't get from her real life. However, the real family for me was also too cartoony. They were kind of grotesques. And so I couldn't really find balance. They became ridiculous.
And this was the fault of what, the author or the production?
I feel like the director. And I feel like everyone on stage was pretty much doing what they were supposed to do and dialing it up. But as she descends into madness and there's a very farcical final scene, I just found it cruel rather than... And I know it's a comedy, but are we supposed to be laughing and then uncomfortable that we're laughing? I'm not so sure. I think people were just laughing at how silly it was.
Is it a problem with 1980s material, do you think?
I think so. Also, the GP is constantly bumbling, but also he's got a crush on her. She's having a mental breakdown. She's disoriented, upset. And when she puts her hand on his knee because she's just trying to comfort him about something, he does all this very kind of clowny, ooh, 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 and then sort of leans in for a kiss a bit later. And I'm like, no GP would do this. And it's revolting. This woman is she's mentally and emotionally sick.
Okay.
She's ill.
We've got it. Time to move on, I think.
Did not like. However, it's on at the Duke of York until the end of February, and it is going to Sunderland in March and then the Theatre Royal in Glasgow. So she's a famous person, always fun to see, but no for me. And then next up, what we've got is Ken Rex. We've got a little trailer for you.
Oh, good.
A snippet of that.
So tell me, David, how do you wind up dead?
My name is David Baird, and I'm the prosecuting attorney for Nodaway County.
See you in court, city boy.
He's terrorized this town since I can remember. 911, what is your emergency? Please help me.
It's about a small town tyrant.
Yes, you couldn't make it up. A town called Skidmore in Missouri, 1981. A man was shot in his car, shot dead. A mob, townsfolk, over 40 people around him, more than one gun used. Nobody named any witnesses, that nobody would testify to what had happened. It eventually was taken at the subtext was he was a rabid dog that needed to be put down. So this is mob justice. However, he was a monster. Dirt poor, youngest of, 15th of 16 children. He fathered over 17 children with various women. Wow. It seems that many of them, it was not entirely with consent. And his final wife was 12 when he met her. And then he divorced his other wife to marry her so that the young girl couldn't testify against him for rape. So the whole thing is very horrible. He burned down people's barns, tried their houses, shot their dogs, indicted 20 times, never convicted. So this is the story. What's incredible is Jack Holden wrote the show, is the only man on stage, does all the voices, darting from a kind of a microphone booth to various microphone stands around the stage. There's a big sort of platform above. It's incredible. One man, virtually no set. There's another man off the side who's doing all the music, and he's playing sort of Americana folk music, also singing, looping stuff, creating sound effects. It becomes like watching a film. We were absolutely gripped. It's a dark, difficult story. Really well done. This is fantastic theatre. I can't recommend it highly enough. This is on at the Other Palace until February the 1st, and it's a must-see.
Absolutely. Got you. Ken Rex it's called, isn't it? Now, Giselle last?
Yes, what we're going to go to is Giselle. So we've got another quick little trailer for that.
Giselle, as you've never seen it?
Yeah, absolutely. This is Akram Khan. It's the 10th anniversary. It's toured the world. It's been seen by up to almost 200,000 people. It's won everything from the Olivier Awards, everything going. It's a phenomenal show. Giselle is traditionally 1841 ballet. It's terribly pretty. It's a gorgeous ballet, and the big set piece is the spirits of wronged women who come in veiled, fluttering, and it's very mirage, and it's beautiful. This time, what Akram Khan has done is put it a sort of future dystopian place. We've got the workers, and you saw some of them swirling around. There's a big wall at the back. They're very oppressed. And then instead of sort of cod, German Rhineland, medieval, we have the wall absolutely rotates up, and these overlords come out in sort of sci-fi Dune-style costumes. The music has been adapted, the synths, tribal rhythms. The willies there, the avenging spirits, have got spears between their teeth, and they drum them on the floor and attack the men with them. It's exciting, the music's stunning, the dancing is incredible. It's on at the Coliseum, London's biggest stage, for 4 days next week, January the 15th to 18th. This is my favourite dance piece, and many people's. And it's a public pleaser. It's not a sort of piece of high art. It's an incredible entertainment. So this one I recommend to everybody. Please go and see.
Stefan, fantastic reviews.
Yes.
Thank you so much indeed. Stefan Kyriazis and Rafa. Coming up, the opening chapters of new books are shrinking to suit readers whose attention span is at an all-time low. I'll talk about that with an author. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
Be nice to escape the grey.
Clear skies, here we come.
As clear as our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. It's nice and calm across the Canary Islands at the moment. Plenty of winter sunshine, but cold across parts of Italy. So you can see plenty of sunshine into Monday across Tenerife there. Madeira seeing some sunny spells. A band of rain across northern parts of Portugal and Spain stretching into France, but pleasant conditions across Italy, but cold across Greece into Turkey. A weather system clearing here, but a frost at night time. Slowly warming up over the next few days there.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to
stop.
You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I saw the other day, I was walking down the street and there was a toddler with an iPhone holder attached to its buggy, you know, just staring blankly at this screen. That toddler wasn't on social media, it wasn't interacting with it, but it was still a screen. And of course, we've now got EdTech being rolled out across more and more schools. So the kids just can't get away from the screens. Sometimes that is down to, you know, parental involvement, parental responsibility. Often it's not. Often it's schools that are now mandating screen use. But all in all, it makes for a bleak and rather depressing picture of childhood.
It really does. And I mean, you know that we've discussed this. So I'm very lucky in the school that Alice is in that they will listen to me because they've got small classes. And I have got them to give Alice's homework on paper. She doesn't get a sign-on to play the games, to learn her times tables, because I tried it and I saw instantly how she was addicted to winning stars, addicted to moving to the next level without actually still learning her 5 times tables. And I think people think that it looks really cool for a child to learn something on a game, but actually it's not developing their brain in the way that we know it should be developed.
No, I mean, the evidence is relatively clear on this now, that certainly for primary kids and by and large for secondary kids, the evidence base that would show net benefit is it better or is it worse in pure educational attainment terms for kids to learn on screens versus old school pen and paper. The evidence is relatively clear that old school pen and paper has a number of benefits that are completely negated with screen use. So, reading, writing, literacy is absolutely core to education and learning.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. In the 1950s, the first chapters of books averaged 4,500 words, but now they barely reach 2,500. Experts say that writers are having to cater for the TikTok generation, whose attention span is short. Joining me now in the studio is author Emma Talon. Emma, welcome to GB News.
Hi.
You're the author of crime novels.
Yes.
17, I believe, so far.
Yes, 17 so far. My 17th came out in December.
And do you think this is true, that chapters are having to shrink?
I absolutely do think that's true. The average length of a chapter has shrunk vastly, as you've just pointed out. It used to be thousands. And now I always aim to write between 750 to max 2,000 a chapter, because if I don't, it's not going to keep readers engaged. It's not going to have the right kind of pace and tension. And that is slightly genre specific, because crime does tend to be, especially the kind of crime I write, does tend to be much more pacey and much more tense.
And how do you know this? How do you know that if you write more, you're going to lose your audience? Presumably you've not tested it. You've not put out a novel that had longer chapters.
No, I've not personally tested it. This is information that mainly comes from my editor, from my publishers. They look at the market, they look at what's going on and what's selling. They look at reviews, they gather all the data from everywhere, and they take note. I do have a lot of reviews and readers message me talking about how they really enjoy the fact that it is very fast and very, and that they can't put it down. And that seems to be the thing everyone's looking for, the unput-downable book.
Yeah, I mean, some of our viewers and listeners now will be tutting, saying, oh, this terrible generation that has no attention span. But on the other hand, maybe it's quite a good thing to put this sort of pressure on you authors. We do have a lot of choices of the material that we're going to consume. Only one of those choices is actually to read. We have lots of other things we can do rather than read. So maybe it's a good thing that you're having to write this well.
I agree, and I think it is important that we keep putting stuff out there that is going to invite people in, and it is going to take them away from scrolling, and it is going to take them away from just flicking through videos. We do have to keep up with that. The market's changing all the time. The way people consume things changes all the time. We've got this convenience culture now that has been vastly brought about by things like TikTok. That's one of the main things. And it's everywhere. You see even apps, there's a whole load of apps now that have come up for non-fiction books that say, hey, download this, and you can consume a whole non-fiction book that's, however long, in 15 minutes. We'll condense it. We'll give you all the bullet points, and then if you want to read more, you can. And that, I saw the first one pop up a few years ago, but there's a number of them now. So across all types of reading, it's really becoming, give us what we want quickly. We don't want any of the fuss.
By the way, another thing that's happening quickly is how quickly you're writing the books. You've written 17 in 10 years.
I have.
That's a fantastic rate of productivity.
Thank you. I do 2 a year. So I usually take sort of 4 or 5 months writing a first draft, and then I'm editing that one while I write the next one. And because I write series, it's quite easy to continue it on, because it's a continuation rather than a whole brand new setup, usually.
You mentioned that your readers communicate with you. Does that mean you know who your readers are? For example, what part of the population are they?
I think it would be safe to say that, in general, my readers are between 35 and 65, mainly women. I do have men read my books, but I do mainly have women. And I tend to do much better here in the UK because it's London-based. It's London-based organised crime, so it tends to do much better here than elsewhere.
Which book would you like to mention of yours that you've written?
My best reviewed book, I think, would be Her Revenge, which is the start of my second series. There's a 7-book series. And that was a really fun series to write, and that was where I suggest most people start if they want to take a look at my books. OK, we'll begin at Her Revenge. And I wish you luck, and I wish me luck with trying to attract younger audiences as well. We both have the same issue there. Thank you very much, Emma Talon. Thank you. Thank you to all my guests for joining me today. I've really enjoyed 2 hours of heartening conversation. I will be back at the same time next week. I hope to bring you a special report from Tate Britain. Now, coming up next is the great Dawn Neeson on GB News. Dawn, what's coming up on your show?
Hi, Carl. Thank you very much. A cracking show, as always, Mr. Portillo, and hopefully we've got a good one for you too. We've got a packed show. We are starting off, we're covering the Free Iran rally live in London, talking about what's actually going on in that country. And we are also talking to a Danish minister, former Danish minister for Greenland, about UK boots on the ice in that country, finding out what's happening there. And we're going for a men's mental health walk with a wonderful Tom Skinner. Oh, and finally, you may think Santa Claus has hung up his sack for the year. Well, brace yourself as you're going to meet Farage Claus, and you won't believe what that's about. All of that and much more coming up after this weather. See you then.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We're starting to enter a period of milder weather now across the UK, but over the next few days things will stay unsettled, further wet and at times windy weather to come across most areas. Low pressure's anchored towards the northwest of the UK, a couple of areas here bringing tightly packed isobars, some blustery winds and pushing outbreaks of rain and windy conditions in from the southwest at times. So looking at the detail for the evening and during the overnight period, very blustery towards the west and northwest of Scotland, likely to see gales, if not severe gales in places here. Outbreaks of rain further south give way to clearer spells and blustery showers, but certainly the most persistent rain holds on across the northwest of Scotland. Notice there a much milder end to the night than recent nights, and certainly generally frost-free heading into the start of the new working week. As for the start of Monday then, a very blustery picture, as I say, across the north and northwest of Scotland. Still gales, if not severe gale force winds here. Gusts of 70, perhaps even 80 miles an hour on 1 or 2 spots. Towards the south and east of the country, it's slightly clearer. Here we'll see some showers at times, and a mixture of clear spells and showers across Northern Ireland as well. For England and Wales, a few clear spells, certainly across the east and southeast of England, will be mostly dry to start the day on Monday. But notice those showers already pushing in across the southwest of the UK into parts of Wales as well. And certainly things go downhill across much of England and Wales through the day. Showers there merging to longer spells of rain from the southwest after the early bright spells out towards the east. Meanwhile, towards the north and northwest, a very blustery picture once again towards the north and northwest of Scotland. Those gales only slowly easing, but further southeast across the country there, some clearer spells at times, and certainly for Northern Ireland, some bright spells and scattered showers. Temperatures generally milder than of late, up to 12 degrees in the southeast, but it will stay quite unsettled into the evening there on Monday. Further showers or longer spells of rain to come. Still those blustery winds, especially towards the north of Scotland, but that heads into a milder start to the day on Tuesday, but staying pretty unsettled into the week ahead. Further spells of rain to come, but all the while those temperatures closer to where they should be for the time of year.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to